shifting gears to Star Wars, we've been talking about Ahsoka lately, and you're kind of the, let's be honest, a Star Wars expert amongst us. And so I thought I'd ask you, what are some of your predictions for the future? Now, to set the stage, we have Thrawn now in the Filoni universe, and Ezra back is back as well. We have Ahsoka and Sabine, Balin, and Shinhati that are in the other universe. I think they're kind of off the board for a little bit. And we have the Mandalorians all in their effect. And we actually got a call out about the Mandalorians during the Ahsoka series. The source material for this is the Heir of the Empire. Have you read that?
The Heir of the Empire trilogy, as I always refer to it as the Thrawn trilogy. I read it, but
Most
that was
people
like
actually, yeah.
15 years ago.
Okay.
It's been so long.
Still not bad compared to what I've read, which is not enough of it. I've been kind of tinkering with it a little bit. Based off of that, and it sounds like Filoni's pulling a lot of material from that. What can we expect from some of our bigger characters going forward?
It's hard to tell because the way that the original trilogy characters were used in Timothy Zahn's original three non-canon books are totally different than what the sequel trilogy has already told us is going to happen. The only big similarity is that Han and Leia got together. That was, and they had a kid, but
Mm-hmm.
in the books they had like three kids. I think they had a set of twins and then another kid after that. Um, I want Mara Jade out of this. I think I've mentioned that before.
Yeah,
It's like our Ahsoka preview thing. I want Mara
right.
Jade, who ended up being Mara Jade Skywalker in the books. I think she was just Mara Jade in the Thrawn trilogy of books. She was a good foil for Luke. They had this like will they won't they kind of combative relationship for like many of the books that their whole relationship was just wild. And then they ended up getting married and having, I think they had one kid named him Ben.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that was great. Seeing Grand Admiral Thrawn and Captain Paleon, who was introduced. Captain Paleon was introduced in, was it The Mandalorian
Mandalorian season
or?
3. Yeah, he was.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah,
like very, very briefly though. I'm like, oh my god, he's here. And it's like 'cause
yeah,
I didn't think that they were gonna make that character, and just everything can tie together so freaking well if they play it right. If I keep hearing that Dave Filoni is making either a movie or his own trilogy of movies. I
yeah,
kind of don't want any more TV shows between now and then of the Ahsoka, Mandalorian,
yeah.
Thrawn stuff. I
Filoniverse or
guess the
whatever.
Mandalorian stuff is totally separate, but yeah,
Well,
the
that being said, the next thing is the Mandalorian, and he says that they can't work on the next Mandalorian until they finish Ahsoka because they're tied together. So that's
okay.
they are. We know that the Mandalorian crew is definitely gonna. My prediction is the it's not the Rebel Alliance. What is it called now? The Republic is gonna be like, hey, we really don't have a military anymore. So, but Carson Teva is gonna be like, well, I know there's a bunch of soldiers, and is gonna hit up the Mandalorians to say like, hey, can you guys help us with the Thrawn situation? I think that's gonna be the situation, or Thrawn's gonna accidentally poke the bear over at Mandalore, and might become a problem. I don't know, something there. Do you think they're gonna do the same? I kind of feel like I can't remember his name, but his assistant, Thrawn's assistant. We don't need to say what he does exactly, right hand man. But do you think they're still going to use that character in that way from the books? Because I feel like he's not being established enough in the shows right now for what ends up becoming of him.
No, no, totally different. I think the are you talking about Captain Pelion or
Yes, Captain Pelion. Thank you. Yeah, him.
yeah, or whatever. I don't whatever rank he was, Commander. I don't know. Yeah,
Yeah,
that character. I don't think that they're going to use him at all in the same way. I think that they just kind of introduced him as a wink and a nod to
that's good.
people that read the books.
Is there anybody
That's at least
currently
what I
in
assume.
Star Wars that you think could take that spot? Because I'm kind of liking that Captain. I can't remember his name now, but the one with the gold face that was introduced in Ahsoka.
Captain
He's got like
Enoch or whatever.
Enoch is exactly it. He's got like a real good eye-catching look, and so
Yeah.
maybe he could play that role. It's got to be somebody like that, I think.
Yeah, I kind of see Enoch as just the heavy right now. He was more of the
Yeah,
like what Captain Phasma was in the
exactly.
prequel or the sequel
This
trilogy.
sequels trilogy, yeah.
Yeah.
That pesky sequel
I
trilogy really ruins things.
yeah, and I think that's the entirety of what Dave Filoni's doing is trying to rectify the mistakes of the of Disney sequel trilogy. But I don't know. I try to take it as just a totally new, different thing altogether. But
Yeah.
yeah. For Captain Paleon, I don't think that Thrawn needs a lackey. I think that Thrawn's presence is big enough by himself because he stands out not only physically having red eyes and blue skin, but just his demeanor and his war record speaks for itself.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't need a lackey. I think in the books it was great to see Paleon because I think that he was supposed to have been a human who was younger than Thrawn, and he was going to take over after Thrawn. That's how I read it, at least in my mind when I was reading the books.
Okay.
Paleon was supposed to have been young, and he was the one that was going to take over for Thrawn after Thrawn dies or retires or whatever. That's how I read it back in the day.
So from my understanding, I thought he was older and that he was kind of like sympathetic to prior or before the Empire stuff. And when things were getting a little out of hand, he didn't care for it. That's what I had remembered or something like that. Like,
I think
you
that's
know,
that could possibly be it. I know that's more how he was written in the canon Star Trek, fuck, in
Star
the
Wars.
canon
Bound
Star
to
Wars
happen.
stuff.
Yeah, okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
That's probably what I'm pulling from, not the old school one. Okay.
Well, yeah, you could be right too. On the, I think you read the old stuff much more recently than I have. So, yeah, I don't
I've
know.
been like doing the Wikipedia dives, you know what I'm saying? Like where it's like, okay, the most source
Gotcha.
material is very big, but I need to go through and learn about these characters this way just so I know kind of what I'm talking about a little bit when I'm going through the Ahsoka series. Um, as for Mara Jade, could Shin Hati fill in that role, do you think?
I've read that online, and maybe not for the Luke Skywalker thing. I mean, it's possible, but it did really have to make it work really well to see where to get to the point where Luke Skywalker was come the end of episode 7, beginning of episode 8 of the movies,
Yeah.
of him being like the hermit in the middle of nowhere by himself. So they'd really have to do something good with her character to make that relationship work and then become that.
Yeah. They also have a problem where, I mean, motion or the face capture for when he's training Grogu or just like walking in to collect Grogu and walk away is fine. But to actually have him as a working character amongst everything else and falling in love, it's going to be a bit much. I think we'd either need a full recast or maybe he's like, I'm a big fan of collecting helmets now or something like that. And a way to cover his face a little bit, you know,
I think Ezra was actually a fan of collecting helmets at the beginning
he
of Rebels.
was,
He could have
yeah,
rated Ezra's helmet collection.
bro. I didn't know you had the Stormtrooper 251 or whatever, like,
Yeah.
something like that. I don't know. That is a problem. So maybe they could replace, if they even use Shin Hati, maybe they could replace the Luke Skywalker side of that equation. Maybe it's Mandalorian. It would be best if it was actually, a Jedi of some sort. Maybe Ezra, but I think they're really pitching the whole Sabine and Ezra thing. Which, as a Rebels fan, I'm like, they're brother and sister, not. Yeah, I don't know. To me, I've always seen them as brother and sister.
It's the Tandy and Rutherford of it all. Like it
Yeah,
really is that relationship, or the Mariner Boimler. It's
yeah.
that relationship.
So I would hate to see them kind of ruin that by having them hook up, but I think they're really pushing that for the mainstream fans of like, oh, she's been released, but she's looking for her brother, in my opinion. But nevertheless, um, any other predictions going forward for the Star Wars universe as a whole?
I'm trying to not predict anything because with predictions comes expectations.
Yeah,
Expectations, Disney's good at ruining them. I
this is
don't
such
want
a
that to
Yoda
happen to me.
statement. Absolutes.
Yeah, I guess it's the meta way of looking at it, but uh, yeah, I just try not to. I have my Star Trek expectations. I try not to set Star Wars expectations anymore, just because of how many movies in a row kind of ruined it for me. So
Yeah, I am setting up expectations just because I know what can be, without trying to dive too deep into it. But I tell you, one of the better decisions of my geekdom lifespan is investing time to watch Rebels. Bad Batch, because now I know how good Bad Batch actually was. I thought for sure it was bad when I first learned about it. When I first saw Omega, I was like, okay, I don't
yeah,
need any more of this, but get past that. And then just cool. And then of course Clone Wars is a given. But yeah, Rebels, I mean, what a fan fic this show is for Rebels fans. Some
yeah.
of the stuff we never thought we'd see.